Okay, we've talked about the highlights. What are some of the lowlights, some of the frustrations that you've experienced that you still be working on if you're reelected?
Honestly, with the re-election, probably one of the challenges dealing with the economic development and redevelopment within the townships, specifically around our south west section of the township, the Avondale, Avencrest area. Obviously, with Hall of Fame Village coming in, there's a lot of positives there, but as you saw on Saturday's Canton Repository that represent about 60% of what I provided, we're going to be burdened with additional cost and response, whether it's fire and EMS because of inflated calls due to mutual and automatic aid.
And we're talking about this area close to the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
That is correct.
And it's right at exit 17A, I think, of Interstate 77. And actually, this area that sits in Plain Township right now is within walking distance of the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
That's correct.
And so last Wednesday, I think the Stark County Commissioners approved Canton annexation. And were you surprised at the Commissioners' action?
Well, not at the Commissioners' action because they have a set of criteria. And honestly, I had some conversations with Commissioner Bill Smith. He actually had reached...
Who was a former township trustee himself.
Absolutely. And he had called and said, hey, Scott, I understand there may be something close to being able to get done. I wanted to reach out to you prior to our hearing. And because I was down in Quantico, Virginia, doing some FBI leadership training, I gave Bill my perspective. I then called the mayor. And honestly, the mayor and I have had a good working relationship from when he was a commissioner because of the work at the county land bank.
And this is Thomas Burnaby, Mayor of Canton.
That's correct. And Tom simply asked, hey, get another one of your trustees down here along with your law director, and we should be able to hammer out the final details on this.
How long ago did this discussion start to work out a CEDA, S-C-E-D-A? Was that comprehensive?
Cooperative Economic Development Agreement.
Okay. And so when did the discussion on this particular one begin?
I would say it's definitely over 9, not quite 12 months. And what happened was we had started with the prior administration.
With the Healy administration.
Yes, correct. And towards the tail end with the elections and so forth, some things just don't get the attention. So once Tom took office, we initiated some conversations on what we could do because Plain Township, ultimately, all of that land for the pre-identified footprint of the Hall of Fame Village is Plain Township. And, yes, the city of Canton borrowed $5 million to turn around and invest it or donate it to the project. But it appears clear that there wasn't a clear repayment means of recovering that. And the business mindset of me, if I'm looking to invest $5 million into something, I need to know what my timetable are and where my sources of being able to recover some of those costs are. And I don't think that was clear. And honestly, as we went through the 9 to 12 months, we had a number of conversations with Deputy Mayor Fonda Williams, Jason Reese from the law department. Tom was in on some of the, I think Sam Slyman may have been in on one, and due to the tension within the discussion, we had moved forward with just the deputy mayor, the mayor, and Jason Reese. So
was Slyman the tension factor? Is that what you're saying?
I would absolutely say that at the time, and
he didn't have very good comments about Scott Haws, as I recall, in the repository article.
Well, and that's absolutely, he can play the bad cop in this situation. The reality is he wasn't in on all the conversations to which the rest of the Canton representatives were. And when we go down a road for 9 to 12 months going, yes, we can create a win-win situation, we just need to hammer out the details. And when I'm making a call to the mayor while I'm out of state, and he goes, yep, get a resource down here, we should be able to hammer out these final details. To only have my fellow trustee Lino and my law director, Eric Williams, go in, and as they relayed back to me, we walked in and we were told, hey, pretty much, we've got our finances we've got to deal with, and we need every dollar we can get. We're going to simply go ahead and annex the property. And as Mr. Slyman likes to allude to in the article, that Plain Township has nothing to offer, and what are folks going to do? Drive through suburbia? Well, actually, a portion of Belden Village is Plain Township. The venue,
And also Jackson, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, to try to stereotype us in that format is not an accurate representation, but furthermore, I find it ironic that actually most of the communities that are flourishing, growing, even if they're at smaller marginal rates, are the townships. Plain Township, Lake Township, Jackson Township, Perry Township. Look at the communities that are having some of the biggest financial challenges. I mean, Massillon just coming out of their financial recovery, to look out at the city of Alliance, where I've got some friends, to the city of Canton. I don't think, it's, I'm not sure what the best word to say is here. I think there's irony in the fact that, quite frankly, the places that are flourishing and doing good are the townships, and now you have the city going, okay, we still got to find ways to grow. Well, grow doesn't always mean from a property aspect. Maybe you need to find a way to best contain and manage your cost and your infrastructure. And our board collectively felt that this was the equivalent of a land grab, because we had Steve Lamiel, Tamsell Property, who was at an ODOT District 4 meeting regarding the 6277 Fulton Road exit and interchange, note that he had to annex because that property where there's currently Canton City Water attached to or connected, if he was to demolish it and then a hotel ends up being developed there, in order to get reconnected, they would be required to annex into the city of Canton.
A matter of city of Canton policy, is that the reason for that?
As far as I don't know what their matter of policy is. I know in the
But is that why he thought it was required, that it, not a state law or anything like that, it is just that Canton wouldn't provide water unless he did exit, or don't you know?
Martin, all I can simply say is I know what we heard in the ODOT District 4 initial meeting regarding that interchange, and he simply stated that in order to get a reconnect for a hotel that would go there, it would need to be annexed in the city. And I know Sam goes so far as to say, well, he wants to annex into the city.
Yeah,
well, of course, when you have
it appeared in the repository article that he approached Canton, and you're suggesting that he didn't really have any choice. Is that right?
That's exactly what we're suggesting, because when you have almost $1 million tied up in that property and it's not even developed yet, and there's that potential, I understand from the business side, okay, the guy's going to go, okay, in order to develop it and recognize potential profit, short-term or long-term, I need water. Well, okay, if that's the step I have to take, that's the step I'm willing to take.
Okay. Well, do you think a hotel will ever be built there? Because I was confused by the article, because if I understood what he said, the owner of the property didn't seem to be all that sure about it.
Well, there's definitely some uncertainty to the degree of which it is. I think is probably being played up a little bit, because when we were in this ODOT District 4 meeting.
And when did that take place?
I want to say April, May. I can clarify that for you at a later point. A representative from the city, because Mr. Slyman wasn't in attendance at that meeting, had said, well, there may be some type of development there. We're really not sure what it is. However, everybody else around the table knew the conversation had been about a hotel. So then when Steve Lamiel got up, representing Tamsell Property, which is the parcel that the annexation was approved for, he goes, it's clear that we are in discussions with a number of folks about putting a hotel there. As far as what brand it's going to be, who's going to develop it, that's not the part that's finalized.
Okay, so it's pretty clear to you then that the plan is for a hotel. It's just a matter the configuration
who
and the
and I think
brand.
when.
Okay. And so is the fight over as far as Plain Township's concerned?
Well, I mean, the annexation's done. There's nothing more that we can do about it because it's a type 2 expedited annexation. As you probably saw in the article, Plain Township will get to retain property tax on that, but our challenge lies in this.
And how big of a factor is that for Plain Township, the property tax?
It's not going to be huge. What's going to
The
be
property tax mostly goes for schools, right?
Yeah, I think within most of our Plain Township bills, 85 to 88% of the property taxes go towards the school. I think between the sheriff's levy, the fire EMS, and the road, the township's about 6, maybe 6.5%
So it's,
of that, and then the remainder goes to some.
so the real money was going to be getting the share of the income tax that employees at whatever is built on that property pay.
Plus the bed tax, Martin, because like we have up in Walker's Mountain, the hotels, there at Everhard and Whipple, those bed taxes, which are 3%, I think, of the room rate, the township gets those, and we actually use that to help fund our parks because we don't have a parks levy. So between that money to help fund parks and zoning, we see it as something where, okay, why can't we create the win-win? Because we're looking at this parcel as going, it's already technically got water. Our fire station is but 2 blocks
Right.
from there, so we know through mutual and automatic aid, we're likely going to be the first ones responding there. And when you strike that balance against coming to you as a tax-paying resident and go, hey, I know you approved additional levy dollars so we could add more bodies on to further improve response to you as a resident, and now you're seeing the potential that, well, gosh, Plain Township through this mutual and automatic aid may be running more calls to this hotel or into the Hall of Fame Village than was originally planned. And the argument that Sam makes of, well, they can just hard bill, you're dealing with transient people. It becomes much more difficult to track them down and collect those dollars. So ultimately, there's a burden that is shifted to Plain Township. And then the other component is really with the roadways because of state access management. We know that traffic's not going to be just going right immediately out of the parking lot onto Fulton. It's going to dump onto Clearview. And trying to get across 3 lanes of traffic without a light there, you're going to risk the potential for increased accidents, which will trigger more fire and EMS, or you're going to end up having folks only go west to turn around in a residential allotment or somebody's driveway or parking lot to go back east so they can head 77 south, 62 east. Or our third situation is folks start meandering back through the allotment to catch Orchard Park, which dumps down to the 77 north on-ramp. So, as one of the 3 trustees that's entrusted with the safety, security, and well-being of our constituents, we know we're going to get naturally some calls and complaints, higher traffic,
Right. But that's all a dead letter now with the annexation, right?
Well, as far as there's nothing, the commissioners have approved the annexation. So there's nothing more we can do.
And your goal was what? A 50-50 split on the bed tax and the income tax?
Actually, it was a 50-50 split on the income tax. Canton was going to keep all the money from the water. They would be able to sell liquor licenses into there, which we had talked and proposed of a split there. Plain Township would charge the bed tax up to our threshold that we're allowed, and then the city actually has additional capability, I think, for another 2 or 3%.
What is your Plain Township's threshold?
I'm almost certain it's 3%.
And so you lose that with the
Oh
annexation?
yeah, with that we definitely lose that.
Okay. Well, who from the Canton gave you the word? Was it Slyman? Was it the mayor or the deputy mayor? Who gave you the word that Canton was abandoning the CETA talk?
Well, Martin, I was not there for the meeting. Trustee Alino and our attorney, Eric Williams, were at that meeting because I was in Quantico, Virginia at some leadership training. So Trustee Alino and Eric Williams were in this meeting with Mayor Tom Burnaby, Deputy Mayor Fonda Williams, Sam Slyman and Jason Reese. I'm not aware of, or nor do I recall, anybody else being referenced from the Canton side in that meeting. So those gentlemen passed that information along to Eric and Al, who then conveyed it to me.
Okay, of course, we all know that Director Slyman, I can remember being in the Stark County Commissioners meeting, and he got up and named himself as the Darth Vader to townships. And in the repository article, he said that townships aren't a permanent fixture going forward in terms of government structure. How realistic is that?
I think it's a fallacy in Sam's head. I mean, he can paint whatever vision he's got, but quite frankly, as I referenced earlier, the communities that are thriving are the townships. Take a look at Jackson Township. Take a look at what's going on in Plain Township. Take a look at what's going up in your township, Lake Township. They're thriving. And I know Sam was upset by the quote that I said, Canton is a dying city, but when I quoted that to Robert Wang, I prefaced it with, as noted in the New York Times article, per Deputy Mayor Fonda Williams, Canton is a dying city. So I think sometimes they need to look within their own to see where it come from, because I know I accurately quoted, I just didn't throw out an arbitrary comment, but I backed up.
And of course, you don't want Canton to be a dying city.
No, because honestly, when you take a look at the regionalism, we all want to be thriving. And I'm a lifelong native of Stark County.
Right.
And I've had my opportunities to leave when I was with Diebold. And for whether it be family or, doing grad school at the time, I've made the knowing and willing choice to stay here. And knowing that, that's also why I opted to run for office to serve as Plain Township trustee, because I think it's a combination of we needed a younger generation to step up, take ownership and accountability, and help steer that ship moving forward and determine where we're going. And when I first ran in 2009, one of the things I ran on was creating a new comprehensive strategic master plan, because the current one that the township had at that time, 85% of it was completed and it was well beyond its life. Well, I'm a firm believer, if you plan and you follow the plan, knowing you have to be fluid at certain points, you set yourself up for success if you're executing it. Because it gives
is that plan published on the township website?
Yeah, actually, if you go to plaintownship.com, I believe it's under the zoning or the general administration. It's work that we had collaborated with the community through a number of hearings, to as well working with regional planning to develop, so we weren't going to be expending,
Was that your project, specific project?
That was something I absolutely.
So it's an accomplishment of Scott Haws?
Yeah, I would absolutely take that as, part of the accomplishments. But like I tell folks when I'm out going door to door, just talking in public, I would love to say, hey, I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. But at the end of the day, it's not just me, it's not just John Sable, it's not just Alino. We have truly a phenomenal team behind us that buys into what leadership wants to do, how we want to do it, and they execute it. So I think that's absolutely critical.
Going forward, what's the relationship between Plain Township and Canton going to be from your perspective?
I think it's going to take some work to restore some credibility, because I've got to tell you, Martin, and to our constituents, when I go for 9 to 12 months as part of our team through discussions where it's positive, there was nothing of contention, yes, we can create a win-win, to only have a 360 and do the complete opposite, that breaks down some trust and respect for another
So
party.
you were blindsided when you were told, no, we can't. Let me have you clear up something. I know not too long ago there was an agreement between Canton, Jackson, and Plain Township that North Canton is supposed to be a part of too, but the mayor of North Canton was totally opposed to that. And I think Plain actually got into that agreement.
Yeah.
How's that different from this CETA that you were trying to work out with Canton?
Well, essentially, as my predecessor had led the initiative on that.
Is that what they call the META?
Yeah. essentially it was saying, hey, it's going to be an agreement to come to some level of agreement in this pre-identified footprint, where whether it ends up being a CETA or a JED, we'll work through that. And honestly, that was part of what triggered the initial conversation with Mayor Tom Burnaby when he got into office and got his bearings about him. And as we started going through that, we found, from a legal basis, to be able to enforce it, it was really about worth what it was on the value of the paper. And to Tom's credit, there was some things he pointed out that descriptions didn't make sense, and even we're sitting here going, how did this not get caught? So I think unfortunately, something they got touted is, hey, this is great. When you really get down into it, the legal validity of it and what it could force or make any one party do essentially was found as null and void. So that's why when we started pushing the CETA conversation, I had tried pushing early on because, the business side of me, hey, let's drive it, make sure everybody's informed, we've got the changes in there, but let's get it done and not drag stuff out. And to Kent's credit, they said, hey, let's actually, in doing the CETA, make sure we have our first property to where we can go to the public and say, hey, we've got a CETA, and this is the first example of how we're going to collaborate, which was going to be this TAMCell parcel property. And obviously that's why, when you get to the end and you're told, no, we're going to annex it, it's definitely a discouraging, disgruntling, frustrating